The Saudiled military coalition fighting Shiite rebels in Yemen said that it will reopen the war-torn country's main airport and a vital Red Sea port to humanitarian traffic. The easing the blockade imposed after rebels fired a missile toward the Saudi capital earlier this month is to begin on Thursday. Restrictions on basic supplies to Yemen have caused the deaths of more than 5,000 civilians, more than 20% of whom are children, say the United Nations. About 7 million people in Yemen, out of a population of 27 million, depend entirely on food aid, and 4 million rely on aid groups for clean water. Poor water supplies are putting the lives of millions of people in Yemen at peril. Photos appear. The airport in the capital of Sana'a would reopen to UN aircraft and the seaport of Hodeida would be able to receive urgent humanitarian aid, the coalition statement said. The port of Salef is also expected to reopen, Deputy UN spokesman Farhan Haq said in New York, citing information UN humanitarian and political officials received from their Saudi counterparts. It was not immediately clear, however, if port operations will return to pre-blockade levels. UN officials cautiously welcomed the decision. It is good news, but we are still waiting to see the specific details, said Jamie McGoldrick, the UN humanitarian chief for Yemen. Yemen has been leveled to rebel by Saudiled airstrikes. Photo AP. Hawk said the UN is monitoring developments and has made clear the tremendous amount of needs on the ground. In an interview just before the coalition's announcement, McGoldrick told the Associated Press that a continued blockade would make Yemen's long-suffering population more vulnerable to cholera and famine. Millions in Yemen are at immediate risk if food aid and the supply of fuel for pumping clean water are interrupted, he said. A disruption of water supplies could reverse recent gains in containing the spread of cholera, which reached about 900,000 suspected cases over the past year, he added. It was not clear if fuel imports, crucial for supplying clean water, would resume as part of the easing of the blockade, he said. Children in Yemen wait for food aid. Photo AP. McGoldrick said his office put in a request to fly UN staff to Sana'a on Thursday. Hundreds of humanitarian staffers from nearly 50 agencies are stranded in Yemen or unable to enter the country, said a Sana'a-based UN official. Ahmed Ben Lasoued of the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said 32 flights have been cancelled since November 6, when the coalition ordered a tightening of the Yemen blockade. The blockade is severely hampering humanitarian operations, impeding humanitarians to provide much-needed assistance to millions of people who rely on it for their survival, Ben Lasoued said. Earlier Wednesday, 2 flights landed in Sana'a airport for the first time since the tightening of the blockade. 7 million people in Yemen, including many children, depend on food aid for survival. Photo AP. One flight evacuated 5 staffers of the International Committee of the Red Cross, according to Samaya Beltifa of the ICRC in Yemen. A second flight carried Russian diplomats, according to an airport official who spoke on condition of anonymity because he was not authorized to speak to the media. McGoldrick said that a flight carrying vaccines, sufficient to begin vaccinations of about 1 million children, is expected to land in Sana'a over the weekend. The Saudiled coalition had further restricted access to the Arab world's poorest country earlier this month, after a missile assault by Shiite rebels targeted the Saudi capital, Riyadh. The missile was struck down, but it was the farthest a projectile by the rebels, also known as Houthis, had penetrated into the kingdom. The conflict in Yemen pits Houthi rebels and forces loyal to Yemen's ousted president against the internationally recognized government and its main backer, the Saudiled coalition. For more than 2 years, airstrikes and ground fighting have left over 10,000 people dead, driven 3 million from their homes and destroyed the country's already fragile infrastructure. International aid groups describe Yemen as the world's worst humanitarian crisis as millions are at risk of famine. Copyright 9 Digital Thai Limited 2017.